My name is Joshua Miller. I'm 36 years old, and 2 months ago, I drove up to the house I'd spent 10 years paying off, only to find my key wouldn't turn in the lock. Before I tell you how I ended up listening to my brother scream for mercy from a holding cell, tell me what time it is where you are and where you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far a story about the ultimate betrayal can travel. I need you to picture this. It was a Tuesday evening, around 7 p.m. The Texas sun was finally starting to dip below the horizon, taking the edge off the heat. I was behind the wheel of my Ford F-150, exhausted but happy. Beside me, my 10-year-old daughter, Lily, was asleep against the window, her breath fogging up the glass. We had been gone for 8 weeks. 2 long, grueling months in Ohio taking care of my father-in-law after his hip surgery. It was necessary, but it had been hard living out of suitcases and sleeping on a pull-out couch. "Almost there, kiddo?" I whispered, mostly to myself. I turned onto our street, Maplewood Drive. My shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. I was dreaming about my own mattress. I was thinking about the height chart penciled onto the doorframe of the kitchen pantry, wondering if Lily had grown enough to warrant a new mark. I was thinking about the porch swing I'd built with my own hands 2 summers ago. I pulled into the driveway. That was the first thing that felt wrong. There was a car parked there, a silver sedan I didn't recognize. A Honda, maybe? It had a bumper sticker for a local political candidate I couldn't stand. I frowned, putting the truck in park. Maybe the neighbors have guests and ran out of space, I muttered. I wasn't angry yet, just annoyed. I wanted to unload the luggage. I gently shook Lily's shoulder. "We're home, Bug." She rubbed her eyes, blinking. "Home? Yeah. Go unlock the front door while I grab the bags." I handed her my keychain. She scrambled out, clutching her stuffed rabbit, hopping over the grass toward the porch. I went to the truck bed, hauling out 2 heavy duffels. I was humming a tune, anticipating the smell of my own house, that mix of old wood and the vanilla candle I always left on the counter. Then I heard the rattling. I looked up. Lily was standing at the door, twisting the key. She looked back at me, confused. "Dad? It's stuck. You probably just have to jiggle it," I called out, walking up the driveway with the bags slung over my shoulder. "You know how it gets when it's humid." "No, Dad. It won't go in." I dropped the bags on the porch steps. "Let me see." I took the keys. I tried to slide the house key into the deadbolt. It hit metal and stopped halfway. I frowned, applying a little pressure. Nothing. I pulled it out and looked at the key. It was definitely the right one. I looked at the lock. It was shiny, brand new. Brass, not the brushed nickel I had installed 5 years ago. A cold prickle of unease started at the base of my neck. I looked at the handle. Also brass. Also new. Did someone break in?" Lily asked, her voice small. Before I could answer, the door was ripped open from the inside. A man stood there. He was big, wearing a stained tank top and holding a baseball bat loosely in his right hand. He looked about 40, with a thick beard and eyes that immediately narrowed at the sight of me. Behind him, a German shepherd started barking aggressively, straining against a collar held by a woman in a floral housecoat. "Can I help you?" the man barked, stepping forward to block the entrance. I stepped back, instinctively putting a hand on Lily's shoulder to pull her behind me. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice rising. "What are you doing in my house?" The man laughed, a short, sharp bark of a sound. "Your house? Buddy, you better check your GPS. This is my house. Now get off my porch before I let the dog loose." "I live here," I said, pointing at the number beside the door. 1402 Maplewood. "I've lived here for 10 years. My name is Joshua Miller. I have the deed in my safe inside. You need to leave. Now." My heart was hammering against my ribs. Was this a squatting situation? I had heard about that on the news. People breaking into empty homes while the owners were on vacation and claiming tenant rights. The man didn't flinch. He leaned the bat against the doorframe and reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I don't know who you are, pal, but I bought this place 3 weeks ago. Closed on it, signed the papers, moved in last Friday. I got the deed right here because the utility company needed it today. He shoved the paper toward me. I grabbed it, my hands shaking. I scanned the document. It was a standard warranty deed. It listed the property description. 1402 Maplewood Drive. Grantee, Robert and Linda Smith. Grantor, Joshua Miller. I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees felt like water. This isn't real, I stammered. I didn't sell this house. I was in Ohio. Look at the signature, genius, Robert sneered. I looked. At the bottom of the page, above the line labeled seller, was my name, written in blue ink. It looked like my signature. It had the loop on the J. It had the sharp M. But there was something else. A small, unnecessary underline beneath the last name. I stared at that underline. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I didn't underline my signature. Never had. But I knew someone who did. My brother, Jake. When we were kids, Jake used to practice forging Mom's signature to get out of gym class. He used to practice mine when I got my first checking account, thinking it was a funny party trick. He always added a flourish, an underline. I didn't sign this, I whispered. This is a forgery. Tell it to the cops, Robert said, snatching the paper back. Honey, call 911. We got a trespasser. The next hour was a blur of flashing red and blue lights. The neighbors came out, standing on their lawns with crossed arms, whispering. I saw Mrs. Higgins from next door looking at me with pity, but she didn't come over. 2 officers arrived. One was a young rookie, the other an older sergeant who looked like he just wanted his shift to end. I explained everything. I showed them my driver's license with the address. I showed them photos on my phone of me and Lily in the living room. I understand, Mr. Miller, the sergeant said, sighing. But Mr. Smith here has a valid, notarized deed. He has a bill of sale. He has the keys. It's forged. I yelled, losing my composure. My brother did this. He must have. Check the dates. I was in Ohio. Sir, calm down, the rookie said, hand resting near his belt. We can't determine forgery on the sidewalk. This is a civil matter. If you think a crime was committed, you need to file a report and get a lawyer. But right now, you are trespassing on Mr. Smith's property. Trespassing? I choked out. My daughter's clothes are in there. Her toys. My mother's urn is on the mantel. We put all the junk in the garage, Robert interrupted from the porch. You can take it, but be quick. I looked at Lily. She was crying silently, clutching my leg. I looked at the house I had renovated with my own sweat. I had sanded those floors. I had painted those walls a soft yellow because Lily said it looked like sunshine. Fine, I said, my voice breaking. We'll go. We spent the next 20 minutes throwing boxes of our personal belongings into the back of my truck. Robert watched us like a hawk, making sure we didn't take anything attached to the house, like the light fixtures or the curtains. When I threw the last box in, I turned to Robert. You bought a stolen house, I said, my voice low and dangerous. And you're going to lose it. He just smirked and slammed the door. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I got back in the truck. Lily was curled up in the passenger seat, sobbing. Where are we going, Dad? She asked. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I had thousands of dollars in equity in that house. I had a savings account, but most of my net worth was tied up in the property. We're going to an adventure hotel, I lied, forcing a smile that felt like a grimace. Just for tonight. I drove to the cheapest motel I could find on the outskirts of town. The neon sign buzzed and flickered. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and lemon pledge. As I tucked Lily into the lumpy bed, I went into the bathroom and turned on the faucet to drown out the sound of my own ragged breathing. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror. I looked like a ghost. My brother. My own blood. He hadn't just stolen money. He had stolen our home. He had stolen our sanctuary. I sat on the edge of the bathtub and pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over my mother's contact. I remembered the conversation from 2 months ago, the day I left for Ohio. Flashback. Just leave the spare key with Jake. Honey, Mom had said, her voice sweet and persuasive over the phone. He's trying to be more responsible. He can water your plants and bring in the mail. It'll make him feel useful. I don't know, Mom, I had said. Jake has been erratic lately. The gambling stuff. He's past that, she insisted. He's going to meetings. Please, Josh. He's your brother. Trust him. End flashback. I had trusted him. I had handed him the key. I had literally handed him the weapon he used to destroy my life. I stared at the phone. It was 11 p.m. I didn't care. I hit dial. The phone rang 4 times before my mother picked up. Her voice was groggy, but there was an undercurrent of alertness, like she had been expecting the call. Hello? Josh. Did you know? I didn't bother with pleasantries. I was sitting on the cold tile floor of the motel bathroom. The door cracked open so I could hear if Lily woke up. Did you know Jake sold my house? There was a pause, a silence so loud it screamed the truth. Josh, honey, listen, she started, her tone shifting from sleepy to that wheedling, defensive pitch I knew so well. You need to understand the situation. Understand, I whispered, afraid to wake Lily but needing to scream. I'm in a motel, Mom, a Motel 6, with your granddaughter. Strangers are sleeping in my bed. Did you know? Jake was in trouble, Josh. My father's voice came on the line now. He must have been listening on speaker. Real trouble. Not just the bookies this time. People with guns. They were going to hurt him. So you let him sell my house? We didn't let him, Mom interjected. He came to us with a plan. He said you have that big salary. You have the promotion. You can get another loan easily. Jake, he had nothing. He was desperate. We thought once he got back on his feet, he'd pay you back. You signed the affidavit? I realized, the horror washing over me like ice water. To sell a house with a power of attorney or a forged deed, you need witnesses sometimes. Or you need to vouch for him. How did he get past the notary? We might have helped him with the paperwork, Dad mumbled, just to speed things up. We didn't want him to get his legs broken. Josh, we were protecting your brother. You chose him, I said, tears finally spilling over. You chose a thief over your son who has done everything right. You chose him over Lily. Don't be dramatic, Mom snapped. You're smart. You're resilient. You'll bounce back. You always do. Jake is fragile. He needed this win. A win. They called stealing my life's work a win. I'm going to the police, I said. I'm going to tell them everything, including your part in it. You wouldn't, Mom gasped. You wouldn't send your own parents to jail. Think about the family reputation, Josh. Think about Christmas. There is no Christmas, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it felt like burning fuel. Don't ever call me again. I hung up. I blocked the number. Then I blocked Jake. Then I blocked the house line. I sat there for a long time, listening to the drip, drip, drip of the leaky faucet. I felt hollowed out. It wasn't just the house. It was the realization that in the hierarchy of my family, I was the resource. I was the safety net they could set on fire to keep Jake warm. The next morning, the reality of homelessness set in. I had to get Lily to school. I had to iron her uniform on the floor of the motel room using a towel and a travel steamer I luckily had in my suitcase. Why does my shirt smell like smoke? Lily asked, wrinkling her nose. It's just the detergent they use here, baby. I lied. Eat your granola bar. I dropped her off, watching her walk into the school building with her backpack looking too big for her shoulders. I felt like a failure. Profound, utter failure. I didn't go to work. I called in sick. I drove straight to the only person I knew who terrified me almost as much as the criminals. Elena Vance. Elena was a divorce and real estate attorney I had met briefly at a networking event years ago. She had a reputation. They called her the Viper. She was expensive, she was mean, and she won. I walked into her office without an appointment. I must have looked like a maniac, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, wearing yesterday's wrinkled polo shirt. The receptionist tried to stop me, but Elena happened to be walking through the lobby with a cup of coffee. She stopped, looking me up and down over the rim of her glasses. "Joshua Miller, you look like you got hit by a truck." "My brother sold my house while I was out of town," I said bluntly. "My parents helped him. I'm homeless." Elena's eyebrows shot up. She took a sip of coffee, never breaking eye contact. "Come in. You have 5 minutes to convince me not to call security." I sat in her office and laid it all out. The trip to Ohio, the key, the return, the stranger Robert Smith, the forgery, the phone call with my parents. When I finished, Elena leaned back in her leather chair, tapping a pen against her chin. The silence stretched for an agonizing minute. "It's a mess," she said finally. "The police are right, technically. On paper, it's a civil dispute. Proving forgery takes time. We need forensic handwriting analysis. We need to depose the notary. Meanwhile, the new owners have rights." "I don't have time," I said, leaning forward. "My daughter is sleeping in a motel that charges by the hour. I have money in savings, but not enough for a down payment on a new place in this market, not with interest rates what they are. I need my home back." "You want to sue your parents?" she asked. "I want to burn them to the ground," I corrected her. Elena smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator seeing prey. "Okay, I'll take the case. My retainer is $5,000. I know you can't access your home equity, so put it on a credit card if you have to." I handed her my Visa. It was a risk, a huge one, but I had no choice. "Here is the strategy," Elena said, pulling a yellow legal pad toward her. "We file an emergency injunction to freeze the assets from the sale. If Jake hasn't spent all the money yet, we lock it down. Then we file a quiet title action to challenge the deed. But Joshua, I have to warn you, this gets ugly. Your parents will lie under oath. Your brother will play the victim. They will drag your name through the mud." "I don't care," I said. "Good. Now, first things first. We need to find the money. How much did the house sell for?" "Market value is around $450,000, I said. "I had about $300,000 in equity." Elena logged into a real estate database. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She frowned. "Here it is. 1402 Maplewood. Closed 3 weeks ago." She paused. "Sale price, $320,000. "What?" I blinked. "That's way under market. Why would he sell it so low?" "Cash deal," Elena muttered. "Quick close. No inspections. Your brother wanted the money fast. He left over $100,000 on the table just to speed it up." My stomach twisted. He had given away a third of my wealth just to feed his addiction faster. "Wait," Elena said, squinting at the screen. "Look at the notary stamp on the digital copy of the deed." I looked. "Barry G. Fletcher." "I know Barry," Elena said, her voice dropping an octave. "Or I know of him. He's a notary who operates out of a strip mall near the airport. He's been flagged in 3 other fraud cases this year, but nothing stuck. He's slippery." "So he's in on it? If your parents weren't physically present to sign for you, and they weren't since you were in Ohio, someone had to pretend to be you. Or Barry just stamped it for a fee without checking ID. This isn't just family drama, Joshua. This is organized fraud." She looked at me, her eyes gleaming. "Go back to the motel. Keep your receipts. Don't talk to your family. If Jake contacts you, record it. Texas is a one-party consent state. You get me a confession, I get you your house." I left her office feeling a tiny spark of hope. But the universe wasn't done kicking me yet. When I got back to the motel that evening, I found Lily sitting on the bed, wrapped in the scratchy blanket. Her face was flushed bright red. "Daddy, my throat hurts," she rasped. I touched her forehead. She was burning up. I looked at the corner of the room where the wallpaper was peeling. Black mold. I hadn't noticed it before because of the dark, but it was there, creeping up the baseboard. My daughter was sick because my brother needed gambling money. I scooped her up, grabbing the car keys to head to urgent care. As I was locking the door, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered it, putting it on speaker as I hurried Lily to the truck. Yeah. Hey, big brother. It was Jake. His voice was slurring slightly. He sounded cheerful. Mom said you were pretty upset. Upset? I slammed the truck door shut, checking Lily's seatbelt. I'm taking my daughter to the hospital, Jake, because we're living in a moldy motel. Whoa, drama queen, Jake laughed. Look, I'm calling to make peace. I know I borrowed the house, but it's done. I got paid, and I'm feeling generous. You sold my house. I liquidated an asset. Look, meet me tomorrow. Lunch. The diner on 5th. I'll bring you a cut. $5,000. Cash. Just to help with first and last month's rent on a new apartment. We're family, Josh. I take care of you. $5,000. He stole $300,000, and he was offering me $5,000 like it was charity. I'll be there, I said, my voice deadly calm. I remembered Elena's advice. Get a confession. Great. See? We can work this out. Don't bring the cops or the money walks. Just me, I said. I hung up. I looked at Lily, who was dozing off in the passenger seat, sweating. Hold on, baby, I whispered. Daddy's going to fix this. And then Daddy is going to make sure Uncle Jake never hurts anyone ever again. The next day, I dropped Lily off at school. Her fever had broken, thanks to antibiotics, but she was still pale and drove to the diner on 5th Street. I arrived 20 minutes early. I chose a booth in the corner, away from the windows. I placed my phone face down on the table, the voice recorder app already running. I ordered a black coffee and waited. My leg was bouncing nervously under the table. I kept touching the pocket of my jeans where I had a copy of the forged deed folded up. At 12:15, Jake walked in. He looked different, better physically than I had seen him in years. He was wearing a new leather jacket, expensive sunglasses, and designer jeans. He walked with a swagger that made my skin crawl. He spotted me, grinned, and strutted over. Josh! He slid into the booth opposite me, smelling of expensive cologne and stale whiskey. You look tired, man. Rough night. You could say that, I said, keeping my hands on the table to stop them from forming fists. Living in a motel isn't exactly a spa day. Jake waved a hand dismissively. Temporary setback. You're a smart guy. You'll find a nice condo. Maybe something with a pool? The house was too big for you two anyway. The waitress came over. Jake ordered a steak and eggs, the most expensive thing on the lunch menu. I just stared at him. So, Jake said, leaning in. Mom said you were talking about lawyers. I told her, Josh isn't that stupid. Lawyers just take your money, bro. Better to keep it in the family. You forged my signature, Jake, I said quietly. You stole my property. I leveraged it, he corrected, pulling a thick envelope out of his jacket pocket. He tossed it onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud. There. $5,000. All hundreds. Count it if you want. I looked at the envelope. It was an insult. It was crumbs from the feast he had made of my life. Where did the rest go? I asked. You sold it for $320,000. Where is it? Investments, Jake said vaguely, his eyes darting around the room. I got a tip on a crypto launch, and I paid off some debts. The point is, I'm solvent now. Mom and Dad are happy I'm safe. Why can't you be happy for me? Because I'm homeless, I snapped, loud enough that a couple in the next booth looked over. I lowered my voice. You committed a felony, Jake. Fraud. Forgery. Jake's face hardened. The jovial mask slipped, revealing the nasty, entitled brat underneath. You want to talk about felonies? Let's talk about how you abandoned the family to go play nurse in Ohio while I was here dealing with everything. Dealing with what? You were living in Mom's basement. I was protecting them, Jake hissed. And yeah, I took the house. Because you didn't need it. You have that fancy engineering job. You have a 401k. I had nothing. It's called wealth redistribution, Josh. It's fair. Fair. I felt like I was losing my mind. And Mom and Dad, they signed as witnesses? They did what they had to do. They knew I needed the money more than you needed the equity. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. And here's the thing, big brother. You can't prove I forged it. The notary stamped it. It's official. If you sue, it's your word against the official record. And Mom and Dad will testify that you authorized it over the phone. They'll say you're lying now because you're greedy. My breath caught in my throat. He was right. That was their plan. Gaslight the court. Mom and Dad would perjure themselves to save Jake. So take the $5,000, Jake said, tapping the envelope. Sign a little paper I brought saying we're square and move on. Or fight me. Spend all your savings on lawyers. And lose anyway because your own parents will call you a liar. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at Jake. I saw the smirk. The absolute lack of remorse. I picked up the envelope. Jake's smile widened. Smart man. I opened the envelope, pulled out the stack of bills, and threw them in his face. Keep your money, I said, standing up. I don't want a cut. I want justice. Jake sputtered, brushing bills off his lap. You idiot. You're making a mistake. The mistake was trusting you, I said. I walked out of the diner, my heart pounding. I got into my truck and drove straight to Elena's office. I played her the recording. She listened, her face grim. When it finished, she sighed. It's good. He admits to taking it. But he also admits that your parents are ready to lie. That complicates things. It becomes a he said, she said, with two witnesses against one. So what do we do? I asked, desperate. We need to break the chain, Elena said. We need to prove the notary is dirty. If the notary is corrupt, the deed is void, regardless of what your parents say. That night, back at the motel, I hit rock bottom. I was eating a slice of cold pizza while Lily did her homework on the floor. Dad? She asked, looking up. Are we going to be okay? Yes, I said, though I didn't believe it. I miss my room, she whispered. I miss the height chart. I turned away so she wouldn't see me wipe my eyes. I was about to go to the bathroom to wash up when my phone rang. It was late, 9:30 p.m. It was Elena. Josh, she said. Her voice was different, urgent, excited. Can you come to my office? Now. It's almost 10 o'clock, I said. I have Lily. Bring her. Let her sleep on the couch in the lobby. You need to hear this. I packed Lily into the truck. We drove downtown. The city was quiet. The skyscrapers lit up against the dark sky. When we got to Elena's office, the lights were off in the lobby, but her personal office was glowing. I settled Lily on a plush sofa with her iPad and went inside. Elena was standing by the window looking out. She turned when I entered. She looked like a cat that had just cornered a mouse. I made some calls, she said. I called in a favor with a friend at the FBI. I asked about Barry Fletcher, the notary. And Barry Fletcher is singing, she said. He got picked up yesterday on an unrelated charge. To cut a deal, he gave up his client list. He admitted to notarizing documents without the signers present for a fee. That's it, I shouted. That proves the forgery. It gets better, Elena said, holding up a hand. I looked into the buyer, Robert and Linda Smith. The squatters, I muttered. They aren't squatters, Josh, and their names aren't Robert and Linda Smith. She walked over to her desk and picked up a file. She tossed it to me. I opened it. There was a photo of the man who had answered my door with a baseball bat. But he wasn't wearing a tank top. He was wearing a tactical vest. Meet Special Agent Ross, Elena said. He's undercover. My jaw dropped. What? The FBI has been tracking a money laundering ring that uses real estate transactions to clean cash for the cartels. They suspected Barry Fletcher was the funnel. They needed to catch him in the act of facilitating a fraudulent sale to a dirty buyer. My house, I stammered. My house was a sting operation. Your brother walked right into it, Elena said, a smirk playing on her lips. Jake didn't find a random buyer. He found a buyer through a fixer who is actually an informant. Agent Ross bought your house using marked bills and state funds to trace the flow of money. I sank into a chair. So the sale? Is it real? No. It's a controlled transaction. But here is the problem. They haven't arrested Jake yet because they are waiting for the second drop. What's the second drop? The contract Jake signed was structured in 2 payments, Elena explained. He got $320,000. But there was a holdback clause for repairs. Another $80,000 due in 30 days. The FBI needs Jake to show up and accept that final illicit payment to charge him with the full weight of the RICO statutes. They want to bury him, Josh. So what do I do? Elena leaned forward. They need you to help them close the trap. They need Jake to feel safe enough to come collect the money. Help them, I repeated, my mind racing. How? Agent Ross, or Robert as you know him, contacted me once he realized I was representing the actual owner, Elena said. He couldn't blow his cover to you at the house because the investigation was active. But now he needs your cooperation. She pulled out a burner phone from her desk drawer. Jake is getting paranoid. He knows you're sniffing around. He knows you recorded him at the diner. He might spook and not show up for the final payout. If he runs now, they get him for fraud, sure. But if he takes the second payment, they get him for federal money laundering and conspiracy. That's the difference between 5 years in prison and 20. 20 years, I whispered. It sounded like a lifetime. It sounded like justice. You need to call him, Elena said. You need to sound defeated. You need to tell him you're dropping the lawsuit, that you accept the family deal, but you need him to get that final payment so he can give you a bigger cut. You need to make him greedy. I looked at the phone. I had to act. I had to manipulate my own brother the way he had manipulated me. I'll do it, I said. The next morning, the plan was set. The FBI set up the closing meeting at a title company office downtown. Another front for their operation. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, holding the burner phone. My hands were sweating. I dialed Jake. He answered on the first ring. What now, Josh? I thought you wanted to fight. I forced my voice to crack. I channeled every ounce of exhaustion, fear, and hopelessness I had felt in that motel room. I can't do it, Jake, I said, letting a sob escape. I can't afford the lawyer. Elena wanted another $5,000 just to file the motion. I don't have it. Lily is sick again. I give up. There was silence on the other end. Then a slow, satisfied chuckle. I told you, didn't I? I told you it was a waste of time. You were right, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Mom was right. I just want to move on. But Jake, 5,000 isn't enough. I need first, last, and security deposit. I need at least 20. 20? Jake scoffed. I don't have 20 on me. But the sale. I improvised, following the script Elena gave me. I saw the paperwork. There's a holdback, right? The repairs clause? That's due today, isn't it? How do you know about that? Jake's voice sharpened. Mom told me. I lied. She said you were getting the rest today. Look, if you give me 20 out of that final chunk, I'll sign whatever you want. I'll sign the affidavit saying I authorized the sale. I'll save you from the fraud investigation. I just need the money for Lily. The greed in Jake's silence was palpable. He was doing the math. 20,000 to silence me forever and legitimize his crime? It was a bargain. Fine, Jake said. Meet me at the title office on Main at noon. Mom and Dad will be there too. We settle this as a family. Okay, I said. Thank you, Jake. Don't thank me, he said arrogantly. Just remember who the smart one is. I hung up. I stared at the dashboard. The smart one, I muttered. We'll see. Noon. The title office was generic, beige, and quiet. Too quiet. I walked in. Elena was with me, posing as my defeated legal counsel there to witness the settlement. In the conference room, the cast was assembled. My parents sat on one side of the mahogany table. Mom looked nervous, twisting a handkerchief. Dad refused to meet my eyes. Jake sat at the head of the table, looking like a king holding court. And there was Robert, Agent Ross. He was wearing a suit now, not a tank top, but he still looked intimidating. A briefcase sat closed in front of him. "Glad you saw reason, son," Dad mumbled as I sat down. "Save it," I said, keeping my head down. "Let's just get this over with." Jake smirked. "Here's the deal, Robert. Josh here signs a waiver stating the sale was authorized. You give me the remaining $80,000. I give Josh his cut. Everyone goes home happy." Agent Ross nodded slowly. "As long as the title is clear, I don't care who gets the money. I just want the keys and the deed free of encumbrances." He slid a document toward me. "Waiver of interest." I picked up the pen. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I looked at my mother. "You're okay with this?" I asked her. "You're okay with stealing my home?" Mom sniffed. "It's not stealing, Josh. It's sharing. You have so much. Jake needs a start. We're just balancing the scales." Balancing the scales. The delusion was absolute. I signed the paper. Jake clapped his hands. "Boom. Done. Pay up, Mr. Smith." Agent Ross reached for the briefcase. He clicked the latches open. Jake leaned forward, his eyes hungry. My parents leaned forward. Ross opened the lid. Inside, stacked neatly, were bundles of $100 bills. "80,000, Ross said. "Count it." Jake reached out. His fingers brushed the top stack of bills. "Wait," Ross said, his hand clamping down on Jake's wrist. "What?" Jake yanked his hand, but Ross's grip was iron. "I forgot one detail," Ross said, his voice dropping the fake gruff accent and becoming crisp, professional. "What detail?" Jake demanded. "Let go of me." Elena spoke up from beside me. Her voice was cool and sharp. "The buyer is actually an undercover agent." The room froze. It was like the air had been sucked out. Jake looked at Elena, then at me, then at Ross. "What?" he whispered. "Robert Smith doesn't exist," Ross said, standing up. He used his free hand to flip open his badge wallet. "I'm Special Agent Ross, FBI. Jake Miller. You are under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering." "No," Jake stammered, his face going pale white. "No, this is a prank." "Josh, tell him." "I helped them, Jake," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I signed the waiver to prove you intended to take the money knowing it was obtained by fraud. You just sealed your own warrant." "Mom!" Jake screamed, looking at our parents. "Do something." My mother stood up, her face red. "You can't do this. He's a good boy. This is a misunderstanding." "Sit down, ma'am," Ross barked. Suddenly, the doors to the conference room burst open. 4 uniformed officers and 2 more agents in windbreakers swarmed in. "Hands behind your back. Now!" They grabbed Jake. He struggled, knocking the chair over. "I didn't do it. It was Josh. He told me to sell it." "We have the wiretaps, Jake," Ross said, cuffing him. "We have the notary. We have everything." My father tried to intervene, grabbing an officer's arm. "Get your hands off my son." "Sir, back off or you'll be charged with obstruction," the officer warned. "Arrest them too," I said quietly. Everyone stopped and looked at me. "They signed the affidavit," I said, pointing at my parents. "They knowingly facilitated the fraud. They are co-conspirators." Ross looked at my parents. "We'll be taking statements from Mr. and Mrs. Miller downtown. If the evidence holds, charges will follow." My mother looked at me with pure hatred. "You ungrateful wretch. You destroyed this family." "No, Mom," I said, standing up. "You did that when you sold my house." They dragged Jake out. He was crying now, ugly sobbing, snot running down his face. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the terrified child he had never outgrown. I walked out to the parking lot. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me shaking. Elena put a hand on my shoulder. "You did good, Josh. It's over." I nodded. But it wasn't quite over. I got into my truck. I needed to pick up Lily from school. I needed to tell her we were going home. Our real home. My phone rang. It was a restricted number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello. You set me up." The scream was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. It was Jake. He must have been using his one phone call from the booking center. "You set me up, Joshua. How could you? I'm your brother." He was hyperventilating. I could hear the background noise of a busy police station. Phones ringing, voices shouting. "I gave you a chance," I said calmly. "At the diner. I gave you a chance to confess and make it right. You threw money in my face." "I'm going to prison," he shrieked. It was a primal sound, full of terror. "They said 10 years, Josh. 10 years. I can't do 10 years. You should have thought about that before you made your niece homeless," I said. "Mom and Dad are going to hate you forever," he screamed. "You're dead to us." "I know," I said, and for the first time the thought didn't hurt. Felt like liberation. "Don't call me again, Jake." I hung up. I sat there in the silence of the truck. I took a deep breath. The air smelled like exhaust fumes and rain, but to me it smelled like freedom. I started the engine. I had a house to reclaim. I had locks to change. And I had a height chart to recreate. This is the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for being patient with me this far. You are amazing. Please like this video and comment 1 below so I know you've been with me through this nightmare. It not only helps more people find this story, but it tells me that my experience means something to someone. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to share the rest of this journey. The silence that followed Jake's screaming phone call was heavier than anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a battlefield after the artillery has stopped firing. You look around and the smoke clears and you finally see the bodies. In this case, the casualties were my parents, my brother, and the version of myself that used to believe family was sacred above all else. I sat in my truck for another 20 minutes before I could make my hands stop shaking enough to turn the key. I had to pick up Lily. I had to be a father. But first, I had to stop being a son. The next few weeks were a blur of legal motions, depositions, and the cold, hard machinery of the justice system grinding Jake into dust. Elena was a shark. She didn't just represent me. She hunted for me. Since the sale was fraudulent and part of a federal sting, voiding the deed was faster than usual, but it still required a mountain of paperwork. 3 days after the arrest, my parents showed up at the motel. I was loading laundry into the back of the truck, getting ready to move us into a temporary short-term rental Elena had found. A place with a kitchen, so I could finally cook Lily a decent meal. I saw Dad's Buick pull into the lot. It looked older, dustier than I remembered. Mom got out first. She looked 10 years older. Her hair, usually dyed a perfect chestnut, was showing gray roots. Her face was puffy. Dad stayed in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel, staring straight ahead. He couldn't even look at me. "Josh," Mom said, her voice cracking. She didn't come too close. Maybe she saw the look in my eyes. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked, folding a towel with deliberate precision. "We mortgaged the house," she blurted out. "Our house, to pay for Jake's lawyer. A criminal defense attorney. He costs $500 an hour." I stopped. I looked at her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's not enough," she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "The bail. The judge denied bail because Jake is a flight risk. They found the tickets to Mexico on his laptop. He's sitting in county, Josh. He's getting beat up. He called me crying saying he's scared of the other inmates." "He should be," I said coldly. "It's prison. We need help," she pleaded, dropping her hands. Her eyes were desperate, wild. "We need money for his defense. If he has a public defender, He'll get the maximum sentence. Please, Josh, you have savings. You have your salary. Just help us save him one last time. He's your brother. I stared at her, feeling a strange detachment. It was like looking at a stranger. You helped him steal my house, I said. You signed a paper saying I authorized it. You were willing to let Lily sleep on the street so Jake could have cash to gamble and run away. And now you want me to pay for his lawyer. We made a mistake, she wailed. We were desperate, but you can't let him rot in there. I'm not letting him do anything, I said, tossing the towel into the truck. He did this. You did this. And as for my money, that's for my daughter. That's for her college fund. That's for the therapy she's going to need because her grandmother decided a thief was more important than her. You have no heart, Mom spat, the sadness instantly replaced by venom. I hope you rot. I hope you die alone in that house. I won't be alone, I said, climbing into the driver's seat. I'll have the people who actually love me, which doesn't include you. I slammed the door and drove away. I saw her standing there in the rearview mirror, small and shrinking, screaming at my taillights. That was the funeral for my relationship with my parents. There was no casket, no flowers, just a screaming woman in a Motel 6 parking lot. The trial, or rather the sentencing hearing, since Jake took a plea deal to avoid the federal RICO charges, happened 4 months later. I walked into the courtroom wearing my best suit. Elena was beside me. The room smelled of floor wax and old wood. I saw my parents in the front row behind the defense table. They looked like ghosts. They had lost their house, I learned later. The second mortgage to pay the lawyer had drowned them. They were living in a small apartment now, relying on Social Security. They didn't look at me. Then they brought Jake in. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. His head was shaved. He had lost weight. He looked young, terrified, and pathetic. When he saw me, his eyes widened, pleading. He mouthed the word, "Help." I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I just watched. The prosecutor read the statement of facts. It was damning. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, conspiracy. The details of how he planned to flee the country, how he used my identity to secure loans, how he manipulated our parents. Then it was my turn. "Mr. Miller," the judge said, looking over her spectacles. "Do you wish to give a victim impact statement?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, standing up. I walked to the podium. My hands gripped the wood. I looked at Jake. I wanted him to hear this. For 30 years, I began, my voice steady. I was the safety net. When Jake crashed his car, I paid for it. When he lost his job, I covered his rent. When he needed rehab, I drove him there. I thought that was love. I thought that was what brothers did. I took a breath. The courtroom was silent. But it wasn't love. It was enabling. I was feeding a monster. And that monster grew until it ate my home. It ate my daughter's security. It ate my parents' integrity. The man sitting there didn't just steal property. He stole my trust in the fundamental bonds of blood. He made my 10-year-old daughter ask me if her uncle was a bad guy. I had to tell her yes. That is a conversation no father should have to have. I looked directly at the judge. He had every chance. I offered him an out. I offered him forgiveness if he just confessed. He threw money in my face. He laughed at me. He isn't sorry he did it, Your Honor. He's sorry he got caught. If you let him out, he will do it again. To me, to our parents, to a stranger. He believes the world owes him a living. Please, show him that the debt has come due. I sat down. I saw my mother sobbing into a tissue. Jake was staring at the table, his shoulders shaking. The judge nodded. She shuffled her papers. "Jacob Miller," she said, her voice ringing out like a bell. "You have taken advantage of the people who loved you most. You have shown a callous disregard for the law and for common decency. The plea agreement suggests a sentence of 7 to 10 years. Given the predatory nature of your crime against your own family..." She paused. "I sentence you to 10 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation. You are also ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $320,000, though the court recognizes this is likely symbolic. The gavel banged. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Jake didn't scream this time. He just slumped. The marshals hauled him up. As they led him out, he looked back. Not at Mom and Dad. At me. There was no hate in his eyes anymore. Just a vast, empty realization that he was truly alone. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. You okay? Elena asked, putting her sunglasses on. Yeah, I said. I think I am. Good, she said. Now here are the keys. She dropped a set of keys into my hand. My keys. The FBI released the scene this morning, she said. The deed is voided. The title is restored. It's legally yours again, Josh. Go home. I drove to Maplewood Drive. It was strange driving down that street again. I half expected to see the silver Honda or the man with the bat. But the driveway was empty. I walked up the path. The grass was overgrown. The flower beds I used to tend so carefully were full of weeds. But the house was still there. I put the key in the lock. Turned. Smooth. Easy. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. It wasn't my house smell anymore. It smelled of someone else's cooking, grease and spices I didn't use. It smelled of that dog. It smelled of violation. I walked into the living room. It was empty mostly. The Smiths, or Agent Ross and his team, had cleared out their tactical gear. But there were ghosts. I could see the scuff marks on the floor where they had set up their equipment. I could see a stain on the carpet that wasn't there before. I walked through the rooms, checking every corner. The kitchen where I had taught Lily to make pancakes. The hallway where we played hide and seek. I went into my bedroom. The bed was gone. I had thrown it out, obviously. The room echoed. I stood in the center of the empty house and waited for the joy to hit me. I waited for the relief, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt a wave of grief so profound it almost knocked me to my knees. This was the scene of the crime. My brother had stood here. He had walked through these rooms, calculating how much he could get for my life. My parents had probably been here, nodding, signing the papers on my dining table. I felt dirty. The walls felt like they were watching me. Dad! I turned. Lily was standing in the doorway. I had picked her up from school on the way. She was holding her backpack, looking around with wide, apprehensive eyes. Is the bad man gone? She whispered. Yeah. Baby, I said, crouching down. He's gone. He's never coming back. Is Uncle Jake gone too? Yes, I said. He's gone for a long time. She walked into the room. She looked at the empty spot where the TV used to be. She looked at the scuffed floors. Then she walked over to the window and looked out at the backyard. The swing is still there, she said. I looked. The porch swing I built. It was swinging gently in the breeze. Yeah, I said. It is. And the height chart? She asked, running into the pantry. I followed her. There, on the doorframe, were the pencil marks. Lily, age 6. Lily, age 7. Lily, age 9. They hadn't painted over it. Lily traced the lines with her finger. She smiled. We're still here, Dad. That was the moment. That was when the ice in my chest finally cracked. Yeah, Bug, I said, pulling her into a hug. We're still here. We ordered pizza that night and ate it on the living room floor using coats as cushions. We didn't have furniture yet. We didn't have much. But we had the keys. The next day, I didn't go to work. I went to the hardware store. I bought 5 gallons of paint. New Beginning Blue, the label said. I bought sage sticks. I bought industrial cleaner. I spent the next week scrubbing every inch of that house. I scrubbed the floors until my hands were raw. I painted over the yellow walls with the new blue. I wanted to erase every molecule of air that Jake or the imposters had breathed. It was hard work. It was physical penance. But with every stroke of the roller, I felt the house becoming mine again. I wasn't just reclaiming a building. I was reclaiming my boundaries. I was painting over the guilt, the obligation, the toxic loyalty that had almost destroyed me. 6 months later. The house looks different now. Better, I think. I replaced the carpets with hardwood floors, something I had always wanted to do but never spent the money on because I was always saving for emergencies, which usually meant Jake's emergencies. I bought a new sectional sofa, a massive gray thing that Lily calls the cloud. It was a Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee. The sun was streaming in through the window, hitting the new backsplash I had installed. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it. A text from Elena. Final paperwork on the restitution filed. Don't expect to see a dime from him, obviously, but the judgment is on record. If he ever wins the lottery, you get paid first. I chuckled. Elena had become a good friend. She had even come to Lily's school play. She waived the rest of her legal fees after the settlement with the title company's insurance came through. We had sued the bonding agency that insured the corrupt notary, and the payout was enough to cover my legal bills and replenish Lily's college fund. Thanks, Elena. Drinks on me next week, I texted back. I walked into the living room. Lily was watching cartoons, her feet propped up on the coffee table. She looked happy. The dark circles under her eyes from those weeks in the motel were long gone. She was thriving in school, back on the honor roll. But there was a shadow that lingered. She didn't ask about her grandparents anymore. She didn't ask about Jake. It was like she had excised them from her memory to protect herself. I went to the mailbox. It was full of the usual junk, coupons, bills. But there was one envelope that stood out. It was plain white. The return address was stamped in red ink. Federal Correctional Institution, Texarkana. My heart did a little stutter step. I took the letter inside. I stood by the fireplace, turning it over in my hands. The handwriting was messy, scribbled. Jake's handwriting. I hadn't spoken to him since the scream. I hadn't spoken to my parents either. I heard through a cousin that they were trying to sue me for abandonment or some nonsense, but no lawyer would take the case. They were pariahs now, drowning in the mess they had helped create. I looked at the envelope. I could open it. I could read his excuses. Maybe he found God. Maybe he blamed the system. Maybe he wanted money for the commissary. Maybe he just wanted to say sorry. My thumb hooked under the flap. Then I stopped. Why? Why did I need to read this? Curiosity? Guilt? Hope? No. I remembered the look on his face at the diner when he threw the money at me. I remembered the text messages he sent to the drug dealers, promising them my equity. I remembered Lily crying in a moldy motel room. There was nothing in this envelope that could fix that. There was no combination of words in the English language that could rewrite the deed he forged. I realized then that closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's not an apology. It's not a verdict. Closure is a door you close yourself. It's the decision to stop letting the ghosts of the past live in your guest room. I walked over to the fireplace. It was a chilly morning, so I had a small fire going. I tossed the envelope onto the logs. It sat there for a second, white and stark against the soot. Then the edges began to curl. The paper turned brown, then black. A flame licked the corner, and suddenly, it caught. I watched the red ink of the prison stamp disappear. I watched my name written in his hand turn to ash. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. "What you doing, Dad?" Lily asked, not looking up from the TV. "Just cleaning up some trash, bug," I said. I sat down on the sofa next to her. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I smelled her shampoo, strawberry. It was the best smell in the world. "Dad." "Yeah. I'm glad we kept the house," she said. "Me too. But," she added, turning to look at me with serious eyes, "if we had to move, I'd be okay. As long as I'm with you." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I know, sweetie. Me too." And that was the truth. The house was just wood and brick. The real home was this, the safety, the boundary, the peace we had built behind the locked door. I had lost a brother. I had lost parents. But I had saved myself. And more importantly, I had saved the father my daughter deserved. I looked at the fire one last time. The letter was gone. Just ash floating up the chimney, carried away by the wind, gone forever. So that's my story. It's a hard one to tell, but I told it because I know I'm not alone. We are raised on this idea that blood is thicker than water. We are taught that family is a sacred bond that must be preserved at all costs, even the cost of our own mental health, our financial security, and our safety. But here is the hard lesson I had to learn in a motel room. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. My brother shared my DNA, but he was willing to destroy me. My lawyer, a stranger I met at a networking event, fought for me like a lioness. If you are holding on to a toxic relationship just because of history or biology, let this be your wake-up call. You are not a bank. You are not a rehabilitation center. You are not a doormat. Setting boundaries isn't an act of hate. It's an act of self-respect. If someone steals your peace, whether it's your house or just your happiness, you have the right to change the locks. I want to hear from you now. This is the most important part. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member to save yourself? Or maybe you wish you had drawn one sooner. If you believe that boundaries are necessary for a healthy life, please comment the word good below. It's a simple word, but it tells me you understand the value of self-protection. Or if you have a story, share one piece of advice you would give to your younger self about trusting the wrong people. I read every comment, and your wisdom might just save someone else who is scrolling through this right now, feeling alone in their own battle. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to join our community of survivors. Until next time, keep your doors locked and your circle tight. Take care.